Greetings from rainy Washington. Today we have a homily for the sixth Sunday of Easter, and the readings are out of sequence actually because uh, the events in the Gospel are actually taking place before the events of the first reading, which is the little piece of the Acts of the Apostles. So what you have here is Philip going to Samaria and proclaiming Christ. He gets a glorious response and he baptizes many people there. And then Jerusalem heard about that and sent Peter and John, who then prayed with them that they might receive the Holy Spirit, our understanding of confirmation. And then they laid hands on them and they received the Holy Spirit. So what we're getting is a telescoping of a bunch of events into a very short time. We have the events in the Gospel, which we're going to look at shortly. Then we have the Acts of the Apostles, where the apostles are acting as if Christ is not walking around among them. He is present to them, and that's understood in terms of the glorious presence of Christ in the church, which happens much earlier in terms of the gift of the Holy Spirit. And what is going on here is that we're seeing a piece of the church operating the way it's meant to operate. In other words, to preach. And very interestingly, Luke wrote the Acts of the Apostles, he puts in preaching the Christ, because that was an expression that the Jews would have understood as the Anointed One. And the Anointed One had been talked about way back since Isaiah. And we're now seeing all the events of the Anointed One, his life, death, resurrection, what it's causing to happen in the world in the formation of the church, which is what we see in the Acts of the Apostles. Moving then to the Gospel, we have this piece of John's Gospel, and again, this is always because John's Gospel is used as the, if you like, the fundamental Gospel when we're talking about these major events. And so we have this piece from John 14, and here we have Jesus giving a discourse to them. If you love me, you will keep my commands, and I will ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate to be with you always. Now, of course, the presence of an advocate means that there is one sole advocate. This is Christ talking about something in the future as reference to him. And he will, and we celebrate this next Sunday, he will ascend into heaven, which is the way he separates physically from us. He doesn't separate spiritually because he is present with his church in the Spirit for all time. But he separates next week through the ascension, and then the following feast that we celebrate is Pentecost, which is the gift of the Holy Spirit. These are all stretched out in terms of the calendar of the church, just simply because there is so much in each one of these things. And since most of us don't go to Mass every day, we don't hear all the readings that are talking about all the different things that are happening. We're relying on Sunday and the events that are located on that Sunday. We actually have to take a bit more time than it probably took in Palestine in the first century for these things to happen. So, very importantly, the confirmation or the confirming of baptism and the sacrament of confirmation in Acts, and then the fact that Jesus is going to send another advocate. For us, that means that we are confirmed and baptized and therefore able to participate in the real pinnacle of all our prayer, and that is the celebration of the Holy Eucharist. And that is where we get our nourishment. That is where we get our conceptual world to take with us out into the very screwed up world that we're living in, where anything is possible, most things are okay, even if they're not moral. And so we're in a very difficult situation, even if we don't want to recognize that. So, very importantly, we have baptism and confirmation, and we have the advocate that Christ has sent us, and that will be the Holy Spirit in terms of the Feast of Pentecost when we finally get to celebrate that. Confusing in one sense, but there's a lot there to encourage us and give us hope. Thank you.